Operation Dudula is once again in the spotlight after it disrupted access to several clinics across the city of Joburg. It's targeting foreign nationals and denying them health care in defiance of South Africa's constitution. Section 27 of the constitution explicitly states that everyone living in South Africa has the right to access basic health care services and that no one may be denied emergency medical treatment even if they are undocumented. The anti-migrant group, however, insists that they are within their rights to deny migrants access to health care. I'm joined now by Kopanang Africa Against Xenophobia's Dale Mckinley. Dr. Mckinley, very good afternoon to you. Thanks very much for your time. I remember our last conversation about a week ago or so, where you were saying that it was because those who have the responsibility to make sure that we deliver, or services are delivered in line with our constitution, when they don't do so, then we have a big problem. If the police don't play their role, if Home Affairs don't play their role, if the health authorities don't do what they are supposed to do, then we end up with a situation like this one.
Yes, good afternoon, Vuyo, and thanks as always for the opportunity. Absolutely. Let's just revisit that because I think it's at the heart of this problem. The first thing is to say that we as Kopanang do not deny that there are problems. There are problems in our healthcare system. There are problems in our immigration system. They need to be addressed. Where we differ and where we fundamentally differ with Operation Dudula, obviously, is in where you go to try to solve that problem or who you basically blame for that problem. And in this case, what we have been saying, and consistently, is that if you try to scapegoat or individualize this as a problem simply of undocumented migrants, not only, as you mentioned, are you violating our constitutional law and acting illegally, this needs to be clear, but I think more appropriately, what you're doing is you're not going to deal with the situation. If that is a concern, then let's look at where the real crisis lies within our healthcare system. I want to give one example that is appropriate in the relation to the link between the blaming of international migrants and the healthcare crisis. If you remember, and listeners and viewers would remember, about a couple of years ago, Poppy Ramathuba, the MEC in Limpopo, the health MEC, was caught virally on video, basically haranguing a Zimbabwean woman and saying, "You're overburdening our healthcare system. You should go back home," and so forth. And this caused a lot of controversy. What was then came to surface a few months afterwards when we did our research was that the Limpopo Health Department had over 150 million rand of unexplained and misappropriated expenditure over the last 3 years under Dr. Ramathuba's basically leadership. So what we were saying then is that if you go and you blame the Zimbabwean woman for basically causing this crisis, you're missing the larger point, which is that there are serious problems within this healthcare system and the management and the use of that money that is preventing people, including all South African citizens, from getting the necessary care. So that's the larger point that we're making here, and we need to have a serious conversation as opposed to people accusing and making threats and harassments to individuals who are simply seeking a basic service.
Of course, I mean, you may have seen this on some of the, the Operation Dudula has its people or people who do support what they are doing or who don't mind Operation Dudula people doing what they are doing, asking, why should we care? These people are here illegally.
Well, I think this goes to another larger debate, which is what do we mean by illegal? This is a very dangerous term to use, first of all, because illegality essentially implies that you have no rights at all. You're an illegal person, therefore you do not exist within the system, which is, of course, according to our own laws, is not the case. A better term is undocumented. And let's remind viewers that there are hundreds of thousands of South African citizens who are undocumented. And many South African citizens have also been caught up in this dragnets of Operation Dudula and their activities as well. So the larger point is not to say that there's this hordes of illegal immigrants. It's to look at where the crisis of documentation lies. The crisis of documentation with regards to migrants lies with the Department of Home Affairs and a dysfunctional immigration system. It also allows, is partially responsible for the South African police services, because what you have is you have a situation where, for example, my hometown here in Johannesburg, where the dragnets that are being done by the South African police service every day in the CBD are resulting in people's documents being torn up. And then they're told that if they pay 2,000, they'll get them back, or that they are confiscated. So if we're going to deal with this problem, we need to deal with it holistically. We need to deal with it internally as well as externally, and not simply to scapegoat individuals, as in this case, in the context of international migrants seeking health care.
And the implications of this, of course, for everyone have to be underscored, because the person who abdicates their responsibility today and blames a foreigner will tomorrow, when they don't deliver services to me and you, find another excuse and reason for you and I, who then say you have to do your job, to be targeted, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I mean, we've been having service delivery protests and engagements for years now around water, electricity, healthcare, education. And these are very real issues for people on the ground. And I think that the emotions are running very high, because if we look at what's happening in the United States, if we look at what's happening in Europe, migrants are easy scapegoats. Basically, you blame migrants for everything, because then you can popularize this politically or weaponize it and then get support. We generally call that sort of populist kind of politics. And we have our own populist politicians here. But you're absolutely right, Vuyo, that essentially the deeper issue here is if people are really fundamentally going to change this system, if we're going to get quality water, accessible healthcare services, where we have things at our clinics, where people are able to get serviced on time, then we need to deal with the fundamental problems that are there. We're not going to be able to blame everybody else all the time. That doesn't mean that there are not people who are taking advantage of the system. It doesn't mean that there are not criminals out there that need to be dealt with. But simply scapegoating them, or basically only focusing on that, as Operation Dudula is doing, is actually exacerbating the problem. It's not dealing with it.
And we're having this conversation on a day the ANC, if they haven't started yet, is having a briefing about celebrating 70 years of the Freedom Charter, which had a whole list of demands, which include the right to health.
Absolutely. And I think let's go to our Constitution, because we are a country that has a supreme law, and that is the Constitution. Our Constitution starts by saying all the socioeconomic rights, all of these rights are to be enjoyed by those who live and work in South Africa. It does not say because you're born in Zimbabwe. It does not say because you are a particular ethnicity or because you're a particular race. And I think here's the bigger picture here, is that what this Operation Dudula is doing, and what many people unfortunately are getting behind with emotive circumstances, is a return to the past, a return to where a dompas, or what you look like or how you speak, is how we judge people. And when you have individual citizens acting as law enforcement agencies and determining what that, we're heading down a very slippery slope. So let's remind ourselves not only of the Freedom Charter of our own Constitution, but let's also remind ourselves that migrancy is a global phenomenon. It's not specific to our country. And South Africans who today want to scapegoat migrants, if our country gets into problems further down the road, and many South Africans find themselves having to migrate, then what you're doing to somebody today might be done to you tomorrow. So it's about dignity and respect. And that was the underlying constitutional values that the Freedom Charter spoke to.
And I was asking that question precisely because the Freedom Charter has been the guiding document of the ANC, which has been in charge for the past 31 years and remains the leading party in the current government of national unity. And my question is, has this matter, or do you believe this matter has received the attention of those who matter. And when I say who matter, in the broader scheme of things, in other words, when it comes to leading, they have been the ministers. They have led all the, they have had the right to appoint people in other positions outside of the executive, outside of the legislature, outside of the judiciary even as well. But in areas that cover virtually all aspects of our lives. I perhaps know the answer to the question, but do you believe that this matter has received attention among those who could have done something about it over the past 31 years?
It has not received the attention it deserves, Vuyo. It has received some attention. We have to, say that there are people of conscience and principle within the ANC who have spoken out, who've reminded of the values and principles of the liberation struggle, of what we fought for to achieve the democracy in 1994. But they, unfortunately, have been drowned out in the last few years by the populists, by those that are seeking cheap political points or that are seeking political support at the polls, as we've seen what's happening in Europe and the United States, where migrants and immigration is an easy issue to take up. So I would say that the ANC leadership and those that are in positions of power and authority need to remind themselves that if we travel down a road where people are going to be blamed simply because they are different, whatever that difference is, whether it's nationality, sexuality, race, gender, and other things, then we're going to undermine the very basis of what those last 31 years stood for. We've been battered and bruised in those 31 years, but we're still standing. We still have our laws. We still have a commitment. And I think the majority of South Africans support that. So the politicians would be made well aware that they need to listen to that clarion call, as they used to say in the ANC, of Pan-Africanism, of Ubuntu, of dignity and respect. It doesn't mean it's a free-for-all, but it means basically that we are part of a community, a Southern African community, an African continent, and a globe, and we cannot isolate ourselves. Let's not travel down the road of Trump and say South Africa first, or America first, or Europe first. Let's say human beings first, and that is the fundamental point in our Constitution.
Dale Mckinley, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.